Well, good evening and welcome to Izzy's Crafty Bees. It's Tuesday the 13th of April and I'm Izzy Szynski from Izzy's Crafty Bees and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. You're very welcome to join me this Tuesday evening. I'll just say a quick hello to a few regular followers. So hello Lorna, hi Sylvia and hi Mum. Thanks for joining me this evening. And if you're not joining me live and you're joining me on replay or on YouTube, thanks also for catching up with me. If you're watching on YouTube, if you would give me a like if you enjoy this video, a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, would you give me a subscribe also, because it helps content of YouTube to stay free at point of access. So thank you for that. So this evening I'm going to show you 3 lovely cards using 2 different techniques for a bundle that's available right now from our January to June mini catalogue. So yes, I'm going to show you those 3 cards, and I'm also going to show you a quick special offer that I've got on just 5 limited items at the moment, so I'll show you those in a moment. But first, as always, I'll share with you 3 things that have made me happy since I last saw you last Tuesday. So first thing that made me happy last week was Gogglebox on Friday when there was nothing else on. Sorry to the royals, but there was nothing else on, and then Gogglebox was just like a little glimmer of shining light in my life on Friday evening. As you can guess, I'm not a massive fan of the royal family. I do apologise. They're there and that's fine, but I'm just not one of the flag wavers. So yes, thank you Gogglebox for Friday. And Saturday I had a fantastic morning with my demonstrator friends and team and demonstrators actually across the UK, as we had a morning of training on an online event, and that was great fun. It was fantastic to be able to share that with some of my team as well. We joined together on a message group, and so that was great fun. And then actually yesterday and today I've been working with my husband. He is a handyman and he's had a project to deliver for a customer, a decking project in a garden. So I've been able to help him as his labourer. Paid. He's going to pay me in stamp sets. So I've been helping him for the last 2 days, and that's why I'm going live this evening instead of my usual Tuesday lunch hour live demonstration. So it's been great actually, because the weather's been lovely and I really do enjoy working with him. We work pretty well as a team. And today I've been using power tools. So I've been using a really big chop saw, and I've still got on my fingers, and I've been using a power screwdriver on a drill. Anyway, I'm still here and I've really enjoyed myself and it's been fun. So let's get on and do some crafting. So I'm going to spin the camera around as always. Just bear with me for the jiggly bit and then we'll do some crafting. So let me flip my camera just to face the wall for a moment, and then we will spin you over to my desktop space. And let's make sure this week that my camera stand is stable, because I had a little slip. Let me move my coaster out of the way. So I have a couple of things just to tell you. Of course, if you're shopping with me, I'm just going to pop the host code there. So if you are shopping with me online, if you enter this host code, if your order is under £150, any orders over £25, and I'll send you a free gift the following month. But something I've put together, you may already know that we have a bundle available at the moment. I'm just rummaging around for the stamp set now. So we have a bundle which is a stamp set and matching dies that are going to be premiering in the new annual catalogue, which goes live on the 4th of May. But these have been on early release to customers. And also at the same time when they were released, there was a pack of designer series papers that were whilst stocks last, and these designer series papers have now all sold out. They were in a much larger pack than this. I can't remember how many sheets, but they've now completely sold out. And one of the sheets had large butterflies that were compatible with the coordinating dies. So what I've put together, and I only have 5 of these packs available, so I've put together a pack just of papers for you to be able to make your own cards. So in the pack for £5 you will get 5 of these double-sided full 6" by 6" sheets of designer series paper, and then the 6th sheet, which had the large butterflies, I will pre-die cut for you. So you will also get 6 butterflies pre-die cut. I'm just going to move those up a little bit so they're all in shot. You'll also get half a sheet of Magenta Madness, Just Jade, Misty Moonlight and Bumblebee. Now, although these 3 colours are actually in the designer series paper, Bumblebee isn't, but I'm sure that you will agree that it coordinates just perfectly. So you'll get half a sheet of those colours. You'll also get half a metre of ribbon in Magenta Madness, Just Jade, Bumblebee and Misty Moonlight. And you will get some card blanks. You will get 3 3" by 3" note cards and matching envelopes. So they're the little square ones. You'll get 1 slimline note card and envelope, and you'll get 2 of our regular note cards and envelopes in Whisper White, or in Basic White I should say. So for £5, that's a pack that I've put together that I can pop in the post to you, and so that also actually includes postage. Now if you want to order one of those, I can pop it in with your new catalogue as well. But I only have 5 of these packs available because that's all the designer series paper that I had available as well. So if you're interested in these, I will be putting details on my Facebook page as well. If you're interested in one of these, send me a direct message and I'll send you the link to my PayPal account and you can pay me that way. So that's one special offer that I have available. So let me show you the cards we're going to make this evening. So this card is a watercolour technique. So I'm going to be demonstrating how to watercolour, and we'll be making this one. And these 2 cards, if you can guess, they're actually almost like a buy one get one free. It's one technique that leads to 2 beautiful cards, which I think is really clever, and it's a really lovely and unique die that's included in the die set. So let's have a look. Oh, Mum says she can't see the host code. So the host code for the moment is WZWRDF2J when you shop online with me. And that's also a pinned post on my Facebook page. So if you're missing this, you don't have to watch back through the videos. You just go to my Facebook page, Izzy's Crafty Bees, where you are now, hopefully, and there's a pinned post right at the very top of my news feed, so you should be able to find that host code. Thanks Mum for pointing that out. So let's make a start and let's make this card first, as this one takes the most time. So I'm going to get myself, let's share with you first of all the set that I'm going to use. So this is a bundle. It's a stamp set that has 8 pieces. So we have 4 image pieces, this big succulent, 2 smaller succulents, a lovely plant pot, and then we have 4 sentiments in the set, and it's a red rubber cling mount stamp set. And we have a set of matching or coordinating dies, and you will see that some of the dies coordinate with the images. So we have dies that coordinate with the images, like the plant pot for example, and the succulents. And then we have some standalone dies. So this piece and this piece I'm going to use on the second card. So I'll be using those 2 pieces, and then this piece, which I'm not going to even try and pop that off because I'll break my nails. These 2 coordinate with the image in the stamps, this image in the stamp set. This piece coordinates with this one. And then fantastically, we also have these 3 label pieces. But that's not all, folks. We have this large die, which is just absolutely fantastic, and it cuts one large piece out, and that's the piece we're going to be using on our second and third cards. So without further ado, let's leave these pieces. Oh, in fact, we've got 4, because one popped off. 4 label dies. I thought there were 4. So I'm going to leave these 2 pieces out, and I'm just going to pop them on a magnetic piece here so I don't lose them. And I'm also going to actually use this die for the sentiment, because what I didn't realise when I made my sample card was actually that there were coordinating dies for the sentiments. I hadn't realised that until I'd finished the card. So let me just clear these away, and then we'll get some cardstock and we'll start doing some cutting and stamping. So let me just pop those all to one side. So I'm going to bring in my trimmer, and we're going to make the card base and the layers that we need. And I'm going to remain standing so I can just keep my eye on comments for the moment. So you can comment as I'm crafting along here. So my card base is actually, I'm saying goodbye to one of the retiring or soon to retire in colours. This is Pretty Peacock, and Pretty Peacock is only going to be available until the end of April, and it will retire with our annual catalogue, outgoing annual catalogue. So I'm going to cut just a regular card base, which is half a piece of A4, and then we're going to score that at 10.5 centimetres. So we get a regular sized card base in Pretty Peacock. Now I felt that that needed another layer, another matte layer, and I decided I would use mint macaron as my layer. And as always, I didn't write down the measurement, but I believe it will be 14.5 by 10. So I'm going to just trim that down. 14.5 by 10 centimetres. And I'm going to actually emboss with an embossing folder that layer. I'm just going to bring that back up to the camera for a close-up, and we'll just have a look at that embossed layer. We're going to use the hammered metal embossing folder, and it gives this fabulous, I've actually used the debossed side on this one just for a different texture, and it just did actually remind me, of course, of hammered metal, but it also reminded me of sort of the puffiness of succulents leaves, and I thought that that went really well with the subject matter. Now I also did this smaller matte layer, and I'm going to get my ruler and measure that one as well. So that's 7 by 11. So let's just trim that down. So we'll have 7 centimetres by 11 centimetres. And when I was designing this card, I started actually with my watercoloured image pieces, and when I held them against just the mint macaron background, I felt that they just didn't stand out. So this, by adding this extra smaller layer, it just gave it some contrast, extra colour contrast, and it just popped, just made it pop and come alive. I'm also going to need some watercolour cardstock. Now I'm using our Fluid 100 watercolour paper in this instance, and I've got myself just over half a piece, half a sheet here. So I'm going to go ahead and use that piece because I think that that will be sufficient. Let me just get rid of my trimmer. And I'm going to start by stamping and watercolouring my image pieces. So I've got my stamps already mounted on blocks. So I've mounted the large succulent image piece, and you'll notice that I've got this piece of, it's actually a piece of post-it sticker underneath. And what I find with these really large surface area cling mount is that they really are clingy. And to help me to relieve them from the block when I finished, I find just popping a piece of post-it sticker under one corner under one side. You could even just pop a piece of cardstock, a scrap, will just help you to pull them off the block. Rather than getting your fingernails under, because you can actually risk damaging the sticker that you stick onto that stamp. So there's a tip for you. And I'm going to use Stays On ink. I'm also going to need some colours to use for watercolouring, and I'm going to use a palette as well, just a watercolour palette, because I do have a re-inker for mint macaron, and I'm just going to drop just a drop of mint macaron. So this is the re-inker bottle, and you get these for re-inking your ink pads. So I do have looking around for my ink pads now, and I've got them out, I think. I do have the mint macaron ink pad, and what I usually do to watercolour is actually squeeze the ink pad to squeeze some ink into the lid, but I'm finding that my mint macaron is a really tough lid, and I'm not able to squeeze enough ink into the lid to satisfy myself. So I'm actually using a re-inker, drop of re-inker in a palette. And the other colours I'm going to use for this card are Garden Green, and this is an old style ink pad, so I know it's really easy to squeeze and squish ink into the lid. I'm going to use Rich Razzleberry, and again this is an old style ink pad, so I know I've got plenty of ink squished into the lid there. And I think that's it. Oh no, Soft Seafoam, I think, for this one. This is a new style, and I should be able to, but it's not quite as stiff, so I've been able to squish enough into the lid. So I'll just say a quick hello to Brenda, who's just joined us, and hi to Pat, who's my friend over in Texas. Hi there. So I'm going to just take a seat, so I'm not going to be able to see comments for a short while, and I'm going to ink my stamp. I'm using Stays On ink, because Stays On ink is the black ink that we use when we want to do a watercolour, because it will be water resistant. And I'm taking my time to make sure I'm really inking this stamp well. So I'm doing lots of little taps and a few big sort of squishes. Stays On ink is quite a sticky ink, so I find that taking my time to really ink the stamp up is time worth spending. And I'm actually going to stand up and put a good amount of pressure. I'm not rocking or rolling my stamp on the block, but I'm going to give it quite a good bit of pressure, because I'm using a very absorbent cardstock. Watercolour cardstock is very absorbent, and you need to give it some good pressure. Now this is a very fine line stamp, and that's stamped beautifully, but it is quite a nice fine line. I'm also going to stamp my flower pot. Now this time I can actually take my stamp to my pad, because the stamp is smaller than the pad, and when the stamp is larger than the pad I take the pad to the stamp, and when the stamp is smaller I take the stamp to the pad. If any of that makes any sense, it will be a miracle, but I hope you understand what I mean. I'm just putting my lid straight back on my Stays On, because I don't want it to dry out, and I'm taking my time to allow good contact with the ink on the paper. This is watercolour paper, remember, so I'm just going to move those slightly sticky wet stamps out of the way. Now I'm going to use my water painter brushes, and I don't fill, or I rarely fill, the body of these. These water painters actually have a body that you can actually fill with water, and weirdly they screw on and off in the opposite direction that you would normally screw. So usually it's righty tighty, lefty loosey, and in this instance it's with these paint brushes it's the opposite, and I rarely fill the body of my painters, I tend to use a little jar of fresh water, and you'll be relieved to know that this is fresh water this week. It's not pond water like it normally looks. And I'm just going to take, now these come in a pack of 3. You get this nice broad tip, which I have left partially full of water, and you get a medium and a fine, and I'm just going to use the medium and fine this evening. And I'm going to start off with the little succulents down this bottom end, and I'm going to use garden green for that, and I'm going to just make a nice puddle or a good pool of very watery ink in one corner, and I'm just going to work really quickly. Even though this is a watercolour technique, I'm going to work really quickly just to demonstrate that this doesn't have to take forever. You don't have to be incredibly precise. And I'm laying down one layer of colour all over that image. At this moment in time, I'm not doing anything fancy with regard to shading. Now, of course, if you choose and you're not into or confident with colouring techniques or painting, and I hope that you do have a go, because it really doesn't have to be either time consuming or difficult or too technical. But if you're not keen to have a go, you can stamp this image straight onto coloured cardstock and simply die cut it. So you could use a garden green ink to start, garden green cardstock to start with, and you would end up with a pretty image. Now, I've rinsed my brush and I'm going to just dry it off on a piece of kitchen towel. Pop the lid back on. Now I'm going to go to my smaller, finer brush, and now I'm going to pick up some of the ink that hasn't had water on. I'm going to just right on the very tip, and now all I'm going to do is just add a little bit of definition along the edges of some of those bits of succulent, and I'm hoping that the camera might pick this up, but quite often when I've watched back, I've realised that actually some of the detail I can see, because I'm only a few centimetres away from my work, isn't shown on the camera, so I will lift it back up and let you have a see. And again, I'm not doing anything particularly technical. It's almost just like giving the edges of the, I'm going to say leaves, I'm sure that they are really leaves, just a tickle of colour, and that just stops it from being completely flat. So if I hold that up, you can just see the edges of some of those leaves I've just tickled with colour. And that's as technical as I'm going to get. I've just rinsed my brush, dried it off on my kitchen paper and popped my brush to one side. Now I'm going to work on this middle of the image, the big succulents in the middle. Excuse me if I'm clearing my throat. I've had pizza for my dinner and now I've got a thirst that you could practically photograph. So this is mint macaron, and if you remember, I can't squeeze very much into the lid. I'm just going to close my garden green, pop that to one side. So I'm going to use, this is just a very inexpensive children's paint palette from a local shop, and I'm just adding some extra water, so I don't want it to be too concentrated. And again, I'm just going to go all over this succulent in this shade of green, which is mint macaron, and each time I'm just going to add a little bit of water, so I've got quite a watery base. And I'm just going really quickly all over, so nothing technical apart from staying within the lines, because that's the aim, isn't it, when we're colouring in. from Texas. Hi Pat, my lovely. I received a birthday card from you, and I'm not sure whether I received it after last week's live. So if I didn't say, oh, I can't remember when I received it, but it was quite recently. So thank you so much for your lovely card, and it's on display behind me. You may have caught a glimpse of it when I was saying hello at the top of the show. And I've been putting up my cards received in my craft room, which is something I really enjoy. You may not have seen it actually. It may have been obscured by my home decor piece, which I meant to point out from last week's live. I've actually popped it in the frame now, so I'm just carefully staying within the lines. Now I've just put that as a simple layer of colour. Naturally it's kind of given me some tone, but I'm going to actually add this lovely pinky edge. If you've ever grown succulents, you'll know that they come in all different beautiful colours, and they sometimes have a pink. Well, I like rich razzleberry, and again I'm just going to make quite a watery. What I try and do with the ink in the lid is make a watery patch and have a full strength patch, so I can actually try and control the ink as a watercolour. And I'm sticking with my medium brush. I'm not going down to a fine brush, and I'm just going to go around the very edges of these leaves of this succulent. So wherever I see an edge of a leaf, I'm just going to go around the edge in a little V shape. So again, nothing too technical, and I'm going to give that a blend in a moment once it's sort of, I've got that ink down. What I loved about this stamp set when I saw it in the catalogue was just that it's a bit unusual. We've got quite an abundance of floral stamps and sweets and bundles with lots of florals. Now I am an absolute fanatic for flowers, so I'm quite happy about that, but not everybody's into flowers. But succulents are really on trend all over interior design. Something I've just rekindled is my passion for houseplants. I've been nurturing some. When we first went on lockdown last year, I brought home our office plant, which is a fig, potted fig, and that plant has a name. It's actually called Herman. I called it Herman. My colleagues didn't call it Herman. In fact, I think my colleagues probably thought I was a bit balmy. But anyway, when we went on lockdown, I brought Herman home and repotted Herman, and he's thriving in my living room. So I got some friends for Herman, and it's looking a bit like a jungle in there. Now I'm just going back over this with some clean water on my brush, and it will just start to blend and bleed that watercolour together. And again, you can see I'm not taking a massive amount of time over this. But yeah, the houseplants have really come back into fashion. Which I'm thrilled about, because I really love succulents. I really liked this stamp set. I thought it was really unusual. I'm just going to hold that up to the camera just to show you. It's still wet, it's still a bit of water on there, but it'll dry as I finish this one off. Okay, so I'm just going to close that ink pad, but before I do, because I've got a puddle here, I'm just going to dry that with my kitchen towel. just so that the next time I squish that ink into the lid, I'm not squishing water onto my pad. Now I'm going to go back to my garden green, but this time I'm going to also use some soft sea foam, and I'm going to use the soft sea foam first. And again, quite a wet puddle. And I'm just going to put that straight layer all over. Now I have to say, one of my favourite ways of colouring is watercolour. I just think it's really quite forgiving, and you don't have to be a technical expert. It's just all about making sure you get a good stamped image to start with, and that you actually have the right kind of paper. If you're trying to do a watercolour, it must be on a watercolour paper, or a paper that will take on water, not a paper that will scrub up and pill with water. So our Fluid 100 watercolour paper is ideal. We also have shimmery white cardstock, which takes on water perfectly nicely, and our basic white thick cardstock will take on water, not quite as well, but it will take on water. But our basic white ordinary cardstock is not very good at taking on water. It will pill the more that you put your brush across the paper. It will make little bobbles. Now I'm going to go very carefully with this garden green because I don't want it to be too dark, so I'm going to put some on my brush and maybe just take a bit off. And all I'm doing is I'm just going to go around the edges again of this petal, leaf, just around the edges, and it just gives it some definition, stops it from looking flat. Because I've gone quite watery, this time this one is bleeding into, so the two greens are merging really beautifully, but still giving me some tone on tone. So we don't need to be professional artists to get some really nice results. Let me just clean that brush off now. And again, I'm just going to dab the watery part from the lid and close my ink pad up. So you can see our water-based inks make really lovely watercolour paints. So fantastic. I'll just show you this to the camera so you can just see that different tone on tone. Oh, hi Barbara. Haha. So now I have two Texan friends, Barbara and Pat, are both online watching. That's wonderful. Now I'm going to colour in my plant pot, and I'm imagining this might be one of those zinc planters. So I'm going to just reach for my smoky slate ink pad. The same technique of squishing a bit into the lid. And again with my medium paintbrush, quite a watery pool. And I'm going to go all over this plant pot. Quite straightforward. Just one layer of that smoky slate ink. So I've got a nice even tone. Now I want to give it some definition. So here's a trick. As that's quite watery, I'm going to use my piece of kitchen paper and I'm just going to blot a little bit. So that lifts some of that ink. So now we've got some shade, and I can add to that shade with some of this ink here that hasn't had as much water. So let's add some shade down this side of this plant pot. So now we start to get a bit of shadow and a bit of light where we've blotted it. Now how about if this zinc or metal plant pot has been left in the greenhouse a little while and it's picked up a bit of rust. How about a bit of cinnamon cider? Now for this one we're going to put quite a bit of water with that ink in that lid, and I'm going to run a little bit of it off onto my kitchen towel, and I'm just going to drop it just here and there. And does that now look like perhaps one of those metal planters that's maybe just picked up a tiny bit of rust for leaving it in the greenhouse? I think I've got one or two like that in my greenhouse. Okay, so I've finished with all of my ink pads for the moment, and I'm going to actually die cut this now using the matching dies, the coordinating dies. I'm just going to pop my lids back on my aqua painters or my water painters and pop them back away. This is the beauty of doing a Facebook live demonstration, because I've got everything to hand, everything is just at arm's length. So now I'm going to bring in my big stamping die cut and emboss machine. What a mouthful. Let's call it Fred. I still haven't really christened this. You know, I can christen a house plant, blooming Herman, can't I? But I still haven't got a name for my machine. Oh, I've just noticed that this image here still has a little bit of water. So I'm just going to blot that with my kitchen towel. And that's absolutely fine. I'm going to lay that on the platform. I think I'm just slightly off camera. I'm going to get the coordinating dies, and they're really easy to line up. But just to make sure that that doesn't jump off the image, I'm going to take some of this really old washi tape. It's quite low tack now, and I'm just popping two little pieces. And what I want to point out that I'm doing is I'm putting them right on the edge of the die and to the outside. I'm not actually allowing them to come inside onto my carefully painted image, because even though they're really low tack, when they run through the machine there is still pressure from the roller, and that roller may just stick that washi tape down onto my image and peel it off and damage the image. So I'm just going to roll the whole lot through, nice and simple. Oh, and I could have just saved myself a bit of time. There's my little plant pot, there's my beautiful image die cut. And what I could have done was stamped my sentiment in that corner and saved myself time, but never mind. So even though this washi tape is ancient and I just keep it on my machine here, it's still reasonably strong, and sometimes that can damage your stamped image if you're not careful. Let's pop that to one side, and I'll just move my machine. Oh, I need my machine back because we're going to emboss. So let's bring the machine back. Let's take the plates out. Let me just reach for my embossing folder. And you'll notice on my embossing folders I've reminded myself to be hinge forward and which number plates I need. So I need plate 1, which is the base, and I need plate 4, which is our, I think this is called a speciality plate or something like that. And I now need my first matte layer, which was this one, if we remember, mint macaron, and I'm going to pop that in the embossing folder, and we're going to run that through the machine. Hinge forward. Now we've got this super. Now this is the debossed side. Let's see if the camera picks that up. So each of these marks is kind of the oh, that's better, that picks it up. And this is the embossed side. For me this looks quite a bit like a succulent. So I think this time I might actually go with the embossed side. On the first card I went with the debossed side, so that's lovely. So we've got our layers and all our components are coming together. We just need that sentiment stamping, and then we can run that through the machine as well. Let me just move the machine slightly to one side. I'll bring back my piece of watercolour, and I'll also say thanks on this card. Now for this one I'm actually going to go for Memento, just so I can talk to you about the difference between the two black inks that we sell. So I used StazOn because it allows me to watercolour, and for this one I'm using Memento because I don't need to do anything else. It's just a nice fine ink. Actually I've not inked that one up enough. Let's just... Now the more you tap it, it's like a capillary action, so the more you tap it the more the ink comes to the surface. Just like, you know, when you make sand castles when you're a child and you pat the sand and the water comes to the top of the sand, it's the same kind of capillary action. There you go, you've learnt something new, or I may have already told you that. And I'm going to use this lovely die from the set because it just fits around that word thanks. I'm going to run that quickly through the machine. So I need my base plate, and I need my plate number 2 for die cutting, and a bottom plate and a top plate, and let's run that through pretty quickly. I'm going to show you this lovely label. Die has a faux stitched image all around the edge, which is just fabulous, darling. Let me just get rid of the machine. So here we go. You can see, let's see if the camera picks, oh there we go, you can see that faux stitching all the way around. That's gorgeous. So now we can simply assemble our card. We've got all of our components, so I can take a seat once more, and it's really a simple... I'm just going to find my bone folder, and I always give my card creases a good burnish because it helps the card to stay flat and stop popping up and springing about. And I'm going to stick my matte layer down. I'm going to use multi-purpose liquid glue because this is quite a deeply embossed piece, and that liquid glue will go into all of those lumps and bumps and it will stick beautifully. That's our first layer, and those colours together are absolutely gorgeous. So yes, we'll be bidding a fond farewell to Pretty Peacock at the end of this month, well on May the 3rd to be precise. Pretty Peacock will be disappearing, but we will be welcoming in some new in colours, and I'm so excited to be bringing you those very soon. I have an order of new products arriving at the end of this week, and I was going to do an unboxing video, but I think I'm actually going to not. I'm going to be restrained, and I might give you some glimpses, but not... I might seduce you with new product rather than flashing it everywhere. Now, I'm going to stick down the plant pot flat, and I'm going to pop the succulents up on dimensionals. I actually prefer this coloured image. This one was quite watery, this one's a bit more blurred, and this one's a bit more precise. So there you go. Every time you do watercolouring, you get a different result. Now I decided to pop this layer across to one side just for a bit of added interest. I could have gone central, and there's nothing wrong with that. So if you like everything lined up in the centre and you like symmetry, then there's nothing wrong with that at all. For me, I just felt it gave a bit of balance. These images with this kind of diagonal gave a bit of balance that way, so I was quite happy with that. I'm going to pop the succulents up using dimensionals, and you'll know I'm a fairly frugal crafter. Oh, she said that one sneaked in. So I don't use too many dimensionals. Of course, you can use as many as you like. As long as when you need more, you buy them from me, hey? Haha. I think that's really lovely, really unusual, a bit different to have succulents rather than flowers. Now I actually added a little snip of ribbon, and I think I saved some. Did I save some in my box? Ooh, no, let me get some off the roll here. I've got all my ribbons on a roll. So I'm just going to grab my fabric scissors and just have a little snip. Let's see. So of course, as Pretty Peacock is retiring, so is this ribbon. So if you love this linen ribbon with the scalloped trim, you need to get it before it's gone. Now to stick the ribbon on, I'm actually going to use a dry tape runner. So I'm going to use Stamp and Seal Plus on the back of that ribbon. Just because if I added wet glue to the back of the ribbon, it would just sink into the ribbon, and it's really difficult to get it to stick. And I've just literally put a snip behind, so it's just a bit of added extra dimension. I'm going to pop this sentiment up on 2 dimensionals, but just tuck it under. And I think there we are. Same but different, ever so slightly different colour, different result with the watercolouring, because it's always different when you watercolour. I think also actually something I could point out to you is when I'd finished this one, I went all the way around the edges with some mint macaron watercolour, just so I didn't have that very stark white edge, whereas I've got the starker white edge on this one. But actually it's all a matter of taste, isn't it? And I think they both look, even though I say so myself, I think they both look fab. So thank you. Oh, thank you Sylvia, thank you Barbara for saying that they're lovely. Now I've got a completely different technique to share with you next. So let me just move those to one side. Here's a card where you do one technique and you get 2 cards for 1 effort. So what I mean by that is we're going to actually use the big die from the set of dies, and as always, as I'm demonstrating, I'm putting things down. Now I can't find anything because things get put on top, so I'm just going to have a very quick tidy round so I can actually find what I'm looking for. And I think there we are, completely buried underneath my trimmer. So I'm going to get out this big die that comes in the set. That's this one, and I'm going to create a piece that's like a lattice. I'm going to use this piece as a stencil for this piece, and I'm also going to get out 2 more of the labels dies. So I'm just going to pop those on a magnet just so that I don't lose them. I've already got my stamps mounted on blocks, so we'll pop those there, and we'll use some more Memento ink. So first of all, and the ink colours that I'm going to use to create these cards are Just Jade, Mint Macaron, Petal Pink, and Terracotta Tile. I'm just going to pop some of the other bits and pieces away in my box to one side, just so that I'm a bit tidier. And I'm actually going to use Just Jade card base and very vanilla cardstock. So I'm just going to bring in my trimmer, just pop the inks to one side, the cards to one side, and the die. I'm going to just bring through my trimmer and we'll just cut those pieces. So we need to make 2 card bases. It's really straightforward. 1 piece of A4, and we're going to cut that just shy of 15 centimetres We're then going to move our cutting blade and we're going to score at 10.5 centimetres. And same with the other half. So we've got our card bases popped to one side. Now I need to cut 2 pieces of Very Vanilla, and I'm actually going to use this one here as my first measurement. And we're going to have a piece 10.5 centimetres by 14 centimetres. What I will point out is that I've cut that so that's the size of the actual die, or a little bit larger than the size of the actual large die, and that's our starting point. Our second piece can be just slightly narrower, so we could go, so we've got that 10.5, we could go just slightly narrower than 10.5, we could go 10 centimetres. I will just leave it at 10.5 by 14 because I can always trim it down afterwards. So we've got our pieces, put the trimmer to one side, and now we can begin the work. And I'm going to bring in a piece of grid sheet to work on. And I'm hoping that this doesn't interfere with the picture on the camera, because sometimes the camera doesn't like the grid sheet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this one through the machine, and I will be right back with you. I'm not going to bring the machine onto my desk because this die cut actually causes a lot of bits and pieces. So I'm going to leave that mess over on my second workspace, so just stay with me. But please feel free to talk amongst yourselves while I run this through the machine. One tip I will give you, and I'll just bring this onto camera, when I line up anything that's a square or a rectangle on my machine, I always put it just slightly on an angle, because it just stops when you're winding it through the die cutting machine. If you've got a straight edge, it will cause that big clunk clunk through the machine, and it will also just stop your dies from what's the word? Bending. That's the word. So let me just run this through. I've just realised how dark it's got. I'm hoping that my light on my desk is sufficient. Now here we are. I'm just going to knock out as many of the little bits and pieces and leave them over to one side. I will show you just how many small pieces actually, when you extract this die, this paper from the die, how many little bits you get. So it comes out of the die really easily, really nicely. But we do end up with lots and lots of these little pieces, which again pop out pretty easily. There's no struggle getting them to fall out. I'm just running my thumb, the pad of my thumb and finger across, and they're just dropping away. You just have to take your time to get them all out. And of course I could have prepared one earlier, but I want you to see actually just how easy these bits are to extract, even if they're a little tiny bit fiddly. Now I'm just going to carefully tip those into the bin. There we are. Now we're good to go. And I'm going to use my blending brushes. So I'm just going to use 2 from the pack. Excuse me. I'm going to put my other piece of Very Vanilla underneath. Now I haven't used anything to stick this down while I did this technique. I simply laid it over the top, taking care to line it up nicely with the edges, so you can see the edge of the one underneath there. I'm just taking time and care to actually line that up. I've just got a pesky piece, there we are, to line that up. And the other tip I will give you is have all of your inks open, so that once you're actually holding your stencil down, you don't have to let go. And I'm going to put this brush with this colour. Where can I put my greens? Let me put my greens up here. I'm going to put that brush with that so I don't get them mixed up. And I'm just going to do a double check that I'm still in shot. Yes, I am just in shot. That's great. Okay, so I'm just going to very carefully hold the stencil with my hands. I'm not going to try and stick it down and risk peeling anything off, and I'm going to start with the lightest colour of the pinky orangey tones, so that's Petal Pink, and I'm going to tap my blending brush onto the ink pad. Now I'm going to just dab it off onto my grid sheet, and I'm going to start with a circular motion. And the reason I do that contact on my grid sheet is to make sure that I don't have any unsightly splodges of full concentration ink. And I'm going to work around, just picking different areas. Just taking my time to build these colours up. Carefully, just making sure that that doesn't slip. I can move my fingers around. And I'm not paying any attention to the actual pattern whatsoever. I'm not thinking, oh, I'll colour this one in that colour and I'll colour this one in that colour. I am simply just working my way around, adding some blended colour patches. Now I'm going to move across to the darker colour, which is Terracotta Tile, and again just being careful to hold that still. And I'm just going to add a slightly darker. It's almost like a blush. I suppose the one thing to take care of is not to fill the whole of the thing with just one shade if you're working with 2 tones but 2 different shades of each tone, if that makes sense. I'm working with 2 different tones or shades of a pinky orangey colour and 2 different shades of a greeny tone. Now I think we'll add some green. So again, I'm going to start with the lightest of the greens, and that's Mint Macaron. And I'm going to work on the areas that have no colour yet. These blending brushes are just beautiful. They're so soft. Of course, you can use a sponge. In fact, I've just, before I came on air, got a piece of sponge. I would tend to use a piece of sponge maybe this size and squish it so it forms a nice dome. And so you can use a sponge. Nothing wrong with using a sponge. I find I get more patchy result with a sponge. Now the blending brushes have been so popular that they've gone on to back order at the moment, but I believe they are coming back into stock very soon, within the next couple of weeks. And I will be placing my next joint customer order for local customers at the end of the month, just before the new catalogue actually launches. If you wanted to order some of these blending brushes, you could add to my workshop order. And I'm going for the darker of the two greens, and that's just jade. I'm just going to work that around some of those areas that I've not touched. A very simple technique. But when I've done these patches here, we're going to reveal very nearly there, and I think we could call that done. So I'm just going to close my ink pads to stop them from drying. And we'll do a reveal, everybody together. Ooh, isn't that fab? It's such a nice technique. So now we've got two pieces that we can use on a card, on two different cards. I've got a little splodge there of ink, but I'm going to cover that with my sentiment. So fantastic. We've got two card bases. Pop one, the lattice one onto one, this one onto this one. I may just trim this down ever so slightly. I've got more of a border at this side than this side, so I may just pop this one back on the trimmer. Couple of sentiments, and I've used some of the other dies to make these gold accent pieces also through the die cutting machine, so we'll do that at the same time. But first of all, I'm going to actually adhere these pieces to the card bases. So once again, to run my bone folder down that crease just to make my cards stay flat, and I'm just going to grab my trimmer back, and we'll just take a smidge off this side, just that little smidge. That will just even out that border. This one of course is dead easy to stick down. We're just going to use some wet glue. You could use glue of your choice, tape glue, wet glue, double-sided sticky tape, glue of your choice. We're just sticking a flat layer down to a card base, so nothing could be easier. That's that one. Now this one's a little bit more tricky because we've got this lacy area. So what I'm going to do, and I will just bring back my grid sheet so I don't get sticky glue all over my desktop, I'm actually going to put a very thin bead of multi-purpose liquid glue right just around the edges, and this is all about controlling your glue. So I'm squeezing and dragging at the same time, but I'm not squeezing too much. If you're working in a hot room or a hot environment, you may find that your multi-purpose liquid glue has a tendency to ooze out of that fine tip. So a tip, if you get what I call a Vesuvius effect, where it's all coming out at once, is to unscrew this bottom, and that will just equalise the pressure, because we do actually have a hole in the bottom as well of the spreading end. That just equals out the pressure and stops that Vesuvius glue getting everywhere. Now the great thing about just putting the glue around the edges, that I can actually hold the piece in the middle without getting glue on my fingers, and I'm going to carefully line that right up at the edge, because I know that this is actually a full width piece at 10.5 centimetres, so I'm taking care to have a nice gap top and bottom and just a little bit of pressure. You're going to get a little bit of ooze out of glue, but let that dry and it'll be absolutely fine. I can just see a pesky piece there that didn't extract itself, so I'm going to just try and find my take your pick tool, and I'm going to find the pricking end. Oops, and just prick that out. There we go. And I'm now going to just stamp a couple of sentiments, and I'm actually going to stamp one on Very Vanilla and one on Just Jade. So let me just move all of my ink pads to one side. I thought I had a scrap of Just Jade somewhere. Oh, there's a smaller piece in there. There we go. And I'm just going to get a scrap of Very Vanilla. There we are. I didn't want to cut into a full piece, so I've just been to my scrap drawer for a little scrap. And we're going to stamp these lovely sentiments. So you make the ordinary extraordinary. How lovely is that? I'm just making sure I've really inked this stamp up. And we breathe in and we breathe out as the ink makes contact with the cardstock. Lovely. And I'm going to die cut that piece, but I will just trim it to make it smaller. And I'm going to kind people are my kind of people. That's lovely. I know lots of kind people. There we are. I'll just pop my... Now this one will go through my die cutting machine with this label, and I'm just going to trim this one down ever so slightly just to make it easier to pop through the machine, and I'm going to use this gorgeous label. So how fabulous is this set of dies that you actually get 4 label dies as well as the image dies, and as well as this brilliant die that makes this fantastic piece. So I'm going to pop those through. I might just bring in my little machine. Let's use the mini for this one. So the mini's not had an outing this evening. I'll just wheel back and get my plate. So we use the base plate number 1 and a bottom plate. And of course they always have a bend, so I'm going to try and use the flattest one. There we are. That's better. And I'm going to just pull that back from the edge a little bit. And we'll just line that up. Let's see if we can fit this one on as well. We might not fit that one on as well. There we are. Handy little mini machine, so portable. There's one sentiment. And not forgetting that I want those gold accent pieces as well. So we'll just have a bit of fun using the mini machine for a few minutes. I do love this, the portability of this mini machine. I know my mum's watching, and mum's been using her mini machine while she's been watching telly, just to cut out some sentiments to have ready for cards. Fantastic. And due to lockdown I've not had the chance to go away in my caravan, but I do know that when I get the chance to be away on my caravan holidays, I'm going to get much use out of. I'm just rummaging in my box. I've got everything prepared for this evening, including some pieces of gold foil. and I've just put all of my inks on top of them, which is ever so useful. So I've been raiding my scrap bin again, and I've got these pieces of gold foil, and in the dies, which once again I've just buried, we've got these pieces, this piece and this piece. So I'm making pretty good use of these dies this evening, and I'm going to cut 2 of each. So let's have a bit of fun with the die cutting machine. Now the reason I pull this plate back slightly and put this plate on top is just because it gives it a nice pinch, and it helps it to go through the rollers just that little bit easier. Of course, it's much better if you don't roll it over your project that's not finished yet. So here we are, and to extract these pieces we can use our pointy end from our take your pick tool, and that just pops out really nicely. The same for this piece. These little, oh, it's already dropped out somewhere. Oh, there he is. These little holes are called extraction holes, and they help you to extract your pieces. And let's just do that on repeat. We'll just get rid of these little bits. There we are. Let's just do that on repeat with another piece of scrap gold foil. So you keep all your scraps, because you don't need a lot of metallic card, gold or glimmer, to add a nice accent to a project. Really just a tiny snip of gold or silver foil cardstock, or a little tiny punched shape of glimmer, just adds that little bit of sparkle and lightness to a project. So let's see. Look, you see that just comes straight out without having to poke it out. So that's that one. And this one might just need a helping hand with those extraction holes, and we just give it a poke and it's straight out. There we are. Just those final little bits to pop out. Dead simple. And we'll just move all the messiness to one side, and that's for me to tidy up later when you're not here. And we'll just put the machine to one side, and we can finish assembling these 2 cards. So they're my originals. Really straightforward. All I wanted to do was add a little bit of something extra. So we could use these 2 little pieces on this card. Now I just chose to double them up on the first card. Simply double them up and pop them underneath the sentiment, so for a little bit of gold tailing down. Now we could do that. How about if we turn this card landscape this time, and maybe have the sentiment here? Should we perhaps have these pieces like this? How does that look? And we could have, do they actually stand out enough? Let's have a think. That's a bit different, isn't it? I think we could go with that. And it's just really to show you that we have these pieces in the dies as well, and they're really nice for little accents. I'm not sure if they're a little bit lost with the lacy background, whether they'd look better on this one. I'm not sure. Why don't we have one of each? Put that one underneath and that one on the top. I'm not sure. No, I think we'll stick with how we had it originally. We will go with this one landscape this time. I think they stand out maybe a bit better on this background, and these being a bit more solid stand out on this background. But what I'm going to do with this one is, on the back of this sentiment, I'm going to run my stamp and seal in a little square, and that will allow me to stick these gold pieces underneath, and I didn't want maybe quite as much dangling down this time. I'll just double them up a little bit and stagger them. And now I can stick that, I can either stick that straight down, or as I did on this one, pop it up with some dimensionals. And let's do that. There we go. So actually the finishing off of this card is quite straightforward. There we are. And this one, I think what we'll do is we'll go with dimensionals again. Just one on each side. And I'm going to go against what I normally do and go straight in the middle. Now to stick these elements on, as I did on this one, what I did was I just got some multi-purpose liquid glue and very carefully just put some dots of glue, and then carefully stuck that down with a bit of an overlap. With gold foil cardstock, because it has an almost waxy back to it, what you do have to do is give it a little bit of pressure, or a little bit of what's the word, not pressure, but just kind of hold it in position, and the warmth of your fingertips usually helps that glue to set. And there we go. I'm just going to take a stand up and have a look. Here we go. I'm still on air this week. I've not fallen off. So they're pretty much the same. And these two just slightly different orientation. But you'll see that that sentiment works both ways round. Little bits of gold. Oh, am I still in shot? I think I've got my camera quite high up this week. So the little bits of gold foil accent really help. So let me just clear the decks a little bit and bring in these cards. Let's just bring in maybe one of each. There we are. What do we think? Let's put them all in shot. So there we are. So yes, Sylvia, I love the fact that we get two for the price of one with this. It's one effort, but we get two cards. And how different is that from one bundle, one stamp set and one set of dies? We get very different looking cards. So some really lovely detail. We get to do a great technique and take our time and really relax into doing some watercolouring. Then we have a fun technique with our blending brushes. For the other card, two very, very different looks. I'm really thrilled with that, and I'm so glad that I actually got this set from the catalogue, because I nearly overlooked it. It wasn't until I saw another couple of cards that I really liked online, and I thought, do you know what, that's a bit different to flowers, and we've got so many flowers. So I'm just going to spin the camera back round. Oh, before I do, what I will do is I'll just clear the decks and share with you again that bundle I've put together. So you may know that we already have the Butterfly Brilliance stamp set and matching dies available, and they are carrying on into, well, they're actually an early release from the new annual catalogue that's yet to go live. At the same time that we released them, we released some designer series paper, which was while stocks last, and that's all sold out. But I've got a bit left, and I thought how nice it would be to be able to share that. So I'm offering for £5, 5 full sheets, and the 6th sheet I have used the dies to die cut the large butterflies from. So you'll get 6 large butterflies die cut. You'll also get a half a sheet of cardstock in Magenta Madness, Just Jade, Misty Moonlight and Bumblebee, and half a metre of each ribbon in the same colours, plus some card blanks that you can make and design your own note cards. So 2 that are 3" by 3", one that's a little skinny one, I don't know the dimensions of this one, and sorry, 3 of those 3" ones, 1 of this, and 2 of our regular note cards. So thank you, Sylvia, for messaging me. That's brilliant. I'll message you straight back with the PayPal details. This is only available, well, I've got 5 of these kits available, 4 now, because it looks like Sylvia wants one. So I've got 4 of these kits left, just for a £5, including postage. And actually, if you want a catalogue, if you've already been a customer, you'll automatically be getting a catalogue, and I can put a kit in with your catalogue for £5. So I'm just going to swing you back round. Bear with me while I jiggle the camera and I can say good evening. Take a seat. Da, da, da. Hopefully. Yes, I do have a spotlight on me. So I'll say good evening and thank you again for watching. Thanks for tuning in. I realised it was evening and not lunchtime as normal. And do you like my pinny? Did I show you this last week? It says, Izzy, same but different. Fantastic. So a couple of other things that I need to just tell you about what's going on with Stampin' Up. Launched today across all markets was a paper pumpkin kit. So it's a £20 kit and it's available in the UK. Paper pumpkin is an all-inclusive kit that's available on subscription but only in North America. So we're really privileged to have this paper pumpkin kit. And that's again launched today, and that will be while stocks last. It's a beautiful floral themed, gorgeously coloured and styled kit, with the theme being condolence. The kits do also make other cards with other sentiments, so do have a look at that. The details are actually on my Facebook page and on my Stampin' Up store, on my Stampin' Up page as well, my Stampin' Up website I should say, so please have a look at that. And our clearance rack of clearance items was refreshed today. I think it's been a bonanza sale. I've had a quick look and I can't see that there's an awful lot of the new old clearance stuff left, but do keep your eye on the clearance rack. It's always worth a look for a bargain. And at the moment we are in transition between catalogues, so we do have some retiring items that are on sale and retiring items while stocks last, because at the end of the month, when the new catalogue goes live on the 4th of May, the retiring items will be gone forever. Bye. We'll be crying, but we'll also be giddy for new stuff. But please, if you've got favourite things that you haven't yet got from the annual catalogue, please have a look at what's retiring and don't miss out. You can place your orders direct and please use that host code, or you can wait and place an order with me at the end of the month with that risk that your favourite items may well have gone. But just call me or message me if you're local and you want to know more. And once again, thanks very much for watching this evening. It's been fun to demonstrate. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you all next week. I should be back Tuesday lunchtime next week, but please just keep watching my Facebook page and I'll give you updates. Again, if you're watching on catch up, thanks for that. Give me a like, drop me a comment, and if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't yet subscribed, please give me a subscribe by clicking the link below, and I really appreciate that. Thanks ever so much, everybody. Stay safe, stay happy, keep crafting. See you next week. Lots of love. Bye.